All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you very much. I know it's been a long weekend. It's been a long weekend. I know. But I'm like every other American who starts his day by cleaning up cat pee. Yes, it's an elite group of us. We do our job quietly and with a, shall we say, a resentment that we've choked down over the many years of cleaning up cat pee. But Tony is here, everyone.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, to right the world. And Kim is here as well.
Kim, how are you?
To keep us honest. And I am here to stir the pot. You are here to help us get through what is a really great, packed couple of hours. We're a live show. That's right. We do it live.
What?
I know. And people think we
We'll do
can't.
it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
It's not written. The entire show is extemporaneous. I know, which is a ding word. And congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs in something that I am still trying to deal with. My Buffalo Bills going down there. And, of course, the Eagles dispensing with the Commanders. So that was football. But the Super Bowl, which is in New Orleans, will be spoken of. We can talk to the commissioner when he comes in later this week. What we are dealing with today is a wonderful show ahead. Even as wonderful as it is, it will deal in subjects that are, of course, a bit troubling. The Friday night massacre that Donald Trump perpetrated against the inspectors general. We will touch on that. Essentially, the cop on the beat is gone. The entire inspectors general crew isn't gone, but most of them are. I think there are 2 left. So an oversight, if you will, is vanishing from American government. The Colombian back and forth, I'm talking about with Colombia. By the way, they got into a back and forth, our administration that represents the United States and the Colombian administration over the flights of deported migrants who would then be dropped in Colombia. And Colombia basically said, hey, dude, we're not accepting these flights. We're not accepting these landings and these people. And Trump said, great, well, I will impose a tariff. And he got into a back and forth. Anyway, we can discuss more of the specifics. Gary Dietrich's coming bottom of the hour. But the reason I mention it is when the White House was putting out official advisories on this question and this issue, they misspelled Colombia. They spelled it like Columbia University. They didn't spell it like Colombia, the country. So these are the geniuses that are, look, we misspell stuff on this show all the time. That's because we don't hold ourselves to the standard of the U.S. government. We don't have budgets that run into billions of dollars. I have Albert. Can I go, hey, man, can you post this video? And then he misspells something. But these people are backed by big money, taxpayer money, and they can't even get the name of the country that they're in a huge diplomatic fight with. They can't even get that right. I just thought it was comical and sad. Trump has canceled Biden's ethics rules, and Trump's EPA appointments, all lobbyists for oil and gas. Yes.
Ethics? What are ethics?
There you go. There it is. Thank you very much for finding it. This was the White House announcement with the White House logo. President Donald J. Trump's truth on Colombia sanctions. Columbia, as though we were sanctioning Columbia University. You can see it right there. It's COLO. Colombia is the name of the country. Yeah, a really bizarre way to get into it. But what Trump did was, and just because we're talking about it, I guess I can, I just want to mention that Heidi Cuda is going to be here today also. Heidi Cuda is amazing. She's a prolific content creator. She's a prolific writer. She's an award-winning television producer. I worked with her and adore her, and she's been on the show before. But what you'll really see is the way in which she, through her Bette Dangerous Substack magazine, through her various works internationally, she makes a lot of noise. And I think sometimes it's good to make noise. So I think you'll really enjoy our visit with her. She called the first week of the Trump administration a week of shock and awful. And she will put some specifics on that as an investigative reporter in the second hour. So Gary Dietrich, Heidi Cuda, that's it for guests though, right, Kim?
I believe yes.
Yeah, good. But we have a lot of other stuff to get to, so I want
The Mark Thompson Show.
I want to get to it. Kim, you remind me that this is Holocaust Remembrance Day.
It is. Yeah, 80 years since the liberation of Auschwitz and other camps.
Death camps across Europe. There were so many. You know, I was in Prague, and there was a tour that I was on, and the number of camps that were involved, concentration camps, death camps, they were so huge in number. They had them listed on the wall. And even the docent, tour guide said, many of you in America may not realize how many of these death camps there were, because we hear about Buchenwald and Auschwitz and, you know, these, if you will, higher profile places in which hundreds of thousands, even in one case up to 1 million people were killed in one place, in one of these camps. But he pointed to the wall, he said, we have them all listed here. He said, look how many there are. And he said, and that is just in, I think in this area, it was just a one portion of Europe he was talking about. So it was the Nazi horror was perpetrated on a scale I don't think we really even truly understand, you know.
I have a weird, sad story. On Friday at Petaluma High School, there was a boy who had gone to school with my daughter for a bunch of years, involved in a fight. Not a boy that normally gets involved in fights. His buddy told him the Holocaust never happened. And they got into a punching thing in the hall over it. I mean, this is 2025 and people are still this way. Kids are still this way, being taught incorrectly. And so I think it can't be anything but the political climate right now. That's why we're seeing it. It has to be, right?
I think the political climate now animates it, and I think the social media environment helps also fan the flames of hate. But I think Jew hating and anti-Semitism is a thing that has been a scourge on the earth for a long time, since religions were invented, since tribalism took over in the form of oftentimes organized religion, and since the persecution of people. And Jews have had to endure it, but there has been nothing on the scale of anti-Semitism writ large. I mean, the Holocaust was an industrialized killing of 6 million Jews in Europe, 11 million people, 6 million Jews. I mean, these are people of major means oftentimes. I mean, like, you know, business professionals, doctors, lawyers. And the way in which that community was isolated, demonized, and then ultimately killed, I mean, it rounded up and killed, is despicable. It's an atrocity that one really can't even imagine. No. And to have it out there that it didn't happen or whatever, it's just, it's so loathsome. It's so toxic. I saw an interesting reference in the world of the Holocaust and Holocaust Remembrance. And I'll read it to you. I think it's actually quite instructive, and it does relate to today. It relates to contemporary time. There was an American soldier, I think this is from Steve Schmidt's Substack. I'll give it a full attribution when at the end. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it's from that. There was an American soldier from the American South captured in the Battle of the Bulge. It ended 80 years ago. His name was Master Sergeant Roderick Edmonds from Knoxville, Tennessee. He was captured by the Nazis 5 days after arriving in Belgium in December of 1944 as part of a wave of replacement troops for the final push into Germany. Incredibly, Master Sergeant Edmonds found himself at a Stalag 9B, at the head of a formation of almost 1,300 American POWs, where he was the senior soldier. He was the 26-year-old master sergeant, and he was in charge. There was not a single other officer at the camp. The Nazi commandant demanded that Sergeant Edmonds call the Jewish Americans forward and separate them out. The Nazi position was that they had impure blood and needed to be enslaved or incinerated. Coincidentally, all of this occurred on the same day that the Soviet Red Army forces overran a series of concentration camps that beggar description called Auschwitz-Birkenau in eastern Poland outside of Krakow. We've referenced it in our conversation already today. Anyway, back to Sergeant Edmonds. He refused to identify the Jewish members of his company, the Jewish Americans. The Nazi commandant held a gun to his head. Sergeant Edmund did not blink. He refused. He said they were all Jews. He then invited the Nazi officer to execute all of them as Jews and become a war criminal who would be hunted down when the war was lost.
Wow.
The Nazi commandant walked away. There were more than 300 American Jews in their prisoner ranks. They were not betrayed. E pluribus unum. He came back from the war and never said a word about any of this to anyone before he died in 1985. Today he is remembered as a righteous among the nations and as a recipient of his nation's gratitude and esteem because he was an American hero grounded in Americanism. Americanism must be defended by all of us who treasure liberty, freedom, and justice. Each are different things, and none can exist without the other. They are all under threat. When the current president of the United States decides to embrace the concepts, creeds, theories, and ideas of Adolf Hitler to rouse the emotions of his followers, it must be confronted relentlessly and factually, he goes on. Just because most political reporters don't understand what they are looking at doesn't mean it isn't happening. Ignorance is danger, not bliss in this situation. So that's from the Substack of, I think it's Steve Schmidt. Yeah, Steve Schmidt. But he tells that story, and I didn't know it.
I didn't either. You think we would? I mean, why wouldn't that be elevated and highlighted? And why wouldn't we shine a light on that as, this is what America is? And why is today the first time I'm ever hearing of this hero?
I mean, I'm sure there are other heroic aspects of the Holocaust. I mean, there were, we know of Schindler's List, for example, it's a high profile. These things have to get some media oxygen. But when Trump released the militia, the personal militia he had, the pardoning of those 1,500 J6ers, I mean, that, as I said, those are his brown shirts. I mean, those are essentially a weaponized paramilitary group that can do whatever they want. I mean, for me, that was a huge thing he did. And I put it up there with the coup that he tried to engineer. I mean, I know that we get lost in the, the hornet's nest of stuff that Trump does, but when he pardons a violent paramilitary group, in the sense that the head guys are the Proud Boys, the 3%ers, et cetera, they can walk free after violent attacks. I mean, they tried to beat police officers to death, and they used bear spray and they used etc. I think it's concerning. And those are, there's our white nationalists, and they're going to continue to do the work of white nationalism. And we have Pete Hegseth, who was just confirmed as the Department of Defense head, and he has every mark, literally, of a Christo-fascist on him, and it's concerning. So I don't mean to, I think we need to remember the Holocaust on Holocaust Remembrance Day, separate from all of this on one level. I mean, it should be remembered, the atrocities perpetrated, the people involved, the specifics that we don't obviously all know. We should remember and reflect separate from everything else, but at the same time, one can't help but put it in the context and framework of contemporary society and what's happening now. And I guess that's why I point to a little bit of what we've seen just in the last couple of weeks here in America in 2025.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So happy Easter, everybody. Yeah, there you go. It's all right. Yeah, good times. Well, you Dr. Phil, who is everybody's favorite fake TV doctor. Is he a doctor or not, Kim? Do you know what the story is on Dr. Phil? I'd heard that he was a doctor, then I heard he wasn't a doctor, then I heard he was like an optometrist, then I heard he was like I don't know, okay. He's some kind of doctor.
I think he is a doctor.
Is he the kind of doctor that who could look at my x-rays, or is he the kind of doctor who would just tell me, like, he would x-ray my head?
No. I think he's what is he? Is he a doctor of philosophy? What is he?
Doctor of philosophy is not a doctor. No, Dr. Phil is not a practicing doctor. Thank you.
He does hold a does hold a doctorate in clinical psychology.
And a postdoctoral fellowship in forensic psychology, but he is not licensed as a therapist. I mean, okay. So he
has a doctorate, but he's just not licensed.
But what's the most important thing in America? He's famous. That's right. That's all. Right. He's a celebrity. Exactly. That's all I care about. Dr. Schmachter, come on. I want to watch him. So, Doctor...
This is a man with anger. This is a man that has resentment towards you.
Dr. Phil, never one to shy away from a camera, brought his own cameras as he embedded with ICE targets in Chicago. These are migrants that ICE has targeted for deportation. Now, this is probably some show he's going to do, special he'll do, whatever. But Dr. Phil was there, and as various migrants were rounded up by ICE, Dr. Phil spoke with them. This is the operation that took place yesterday.
And I don't think it was for their mental health.
No, this is completely opportunistic and completely self-serving, what he does. Tony, go ahead, run a little bit of it if you would, please. Yeah.
What's your name?
Seda. Seda what? You have a first and last name? Sam. Seda Sam? Yes.
Where are you from?
Where I was born or where I'm from?
Where are you born?
Thailand.
You been deported before from the United States?
No.
Never been deported?
But I've been in the system before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you been charged with
Charged for it?
before?
I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna talk about lawyer.
Yeah.
Smart
Are
move.
you a citizen?
My mom's a citizen.
Your mother's a citizen?
Yes.
But you're not?
Nope.
I'm a citizen of shove it up your ass, I'll tell you that. That's what I would have said. Hey, who are you, dude? Right. Wow. I mean, this is a wide-ranging immigration crackdown that Donald Trump advertised, ran on it, and won on it.
As Jess writes, what is Dr. Phil doing there? What is happening? Did ICE invite Dr. Phil along for the ride? Why is he showing up?
Dr. Phil was embedded with ICE. And when he says embedded. It kind of reminds you of war correspondents who are oftentimes embedded with various military operations, et cetera. But he had to get permission from the U.S. government. I'm sure that wasn't hard. He's a backer of Trump. He spoke at Trump's big rally at Madison Square Garden. He's monetizing their misfortune. Thank you, Santi. That's exactly right. I mean, it's a, it's really low ebb when you get to moments like that. Someone call Oprah, says Silicon Valley blocks. Yeah. So this is what's happening. Also, I will remind you in a way that they're trying to advertise these roundups. So in a way, Dr. Phil's presence serves their bottom line, which is to round up immigrants in a high-profile way, get it out there in media. Two things happen. It creates the impression that they're rounding up tons of migrants, the way they were talking about in the run-up to the election. 11 million people we're going to deport, all of that sort of thing. I told you at the time, impossible, not the logistical superstructure necessary, not the infrastructure necessary to do it, not the money necessary to pay for it. It's ridiculous. It's one more absurdity. But people bought into it, and we said on the show, this is exactly what was going to happen. There'll be some high-profile roundups. I'm not saying that there won't be repercussions. I'll get to that in a second. They've already happened. But the idea somehow that people like Dr. Phil don't serve that end is, I think, missing the point. He's very much part of it. They want publicity. They want people embedded. You'll see Fox News correspondents embedded with ICE agents. You're going to see this out there. They want to advertise the fact that they are deporting people. These are not dangerous criminals, and this is costing a fortune, says Cousin Erie. Thank you for the super chat. And you're right. Or you're not, meaning I don't know whether that guy's a dangerous criminal or not, but the idea was to start with dangerous criminals. And unless he's, meaning Trump, deporting dangerous criminals, then this is all just rounding up, the low-hanging fruit. Ain't no hate like Christian love, says Natalie Alejandro. It's troubling because you'd like to see some kind of coherence to the policy. And of course, if you want coherence, you don't go to the Trump people. Dr. Phil is nasty, mean, bully. Well, he's found the right moment. I don't know who said that, but that was, that's not wrong. Dr. Phil is another spokesman like Fox News for Trump, says Calvin. Yeah, could be. He certainly serves their purpose here. He certainly serves his purpose here. But here's what I wanted to get to as the second step, because it's already begun. The threats of these roundups and the high-profile nature of them. High-profile nature has essentially produced a panic, right, among those who are not in this country legally, but who have done nothing illegal. I mean, these are the people who are involved in agriculture, in the slaughterhouses, in these horrible jobs that Americans really don't want in the main. And because of the increased ICE raids, they're having negative effects on the nation's agricultural sector. There is worry that food prices could skyrocket in the near future as a result of these aggressive immigration policies. Bakersfield, California saw a massive drop-off in the number of field workers showing up for work just last week. This is after border agents in unmarked Chevy Suburbans rounded up and detained immigrants in that area.
Wait, I thought that we were going to lower prices of food. I thought we were bringing prices down, Mark.
Well, first we're going to raise them, and then we're going to lower them.
Okay.
So you'll look back at 2024 as the good old days. So the end results of these people being spooked by unmarked Chevy Suburbans rounding up and detaining immigrants in the area of agriculture near Bakersfield, profiling individuals that they believe to be field workers. The end result is unpicked oranges that are roasting in the California sun at the height of the season. Bakersfield makes up a small portion of California's Central Valley, produces approximately a quarter of the nation's food. Kern County, where Bakersfield is located, has ranked within the top 3 agricultural counties in the nation for the last several years. And how do you think they get to that place where They are one of the nation's most productive agricultural counties. They do it on the backs of undocumented laborers.
That's right.
More than half of the country's workforce is undocumented laborers. This is not some new revelation. We know this. We know that the slaughterhouses, the agricultural fields are populated with, and then it goes on, sanitation services,
restaurants.
Thank you, restaurants, etc. There's a dark economy supporting the American economy. And so this is a tricky balance you have to strike. That's why the high ground was in immigration policy, well, we're going to get rid of the violent criminals or the ones who are here on, have overstayed their visas because their court dates haven't come up. Those who are the troublemakers, we're going to get rid of them. But as it turns out, the chilling effect extends well beyond them. And then you can't tell me you're just getting rid of them when you're pulling up these dark Chevy Suburbans and you're shaking down many of these agricultural workers. You will bring the economy to its knees. You really will. You'll bring the agricultural economy to its knees, and then that's just the beginning. The ripple effects are substantial. So we'll talk about it, but, just road testing the first few days of it, I'd say they're getting a successful run in the sense that they are scaring the immigration targeted population, those who are here illegally, but many of those people you need. So that's to be continued.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
It is a Monday. We are live. We came from the radio, believe it or not. I know it's weird. We came from a radio station in San Francisco, one of my favorite cities in the world. And it's better, by the way, San Francisco, than all of the bad pub that it's gotten over the last few years. And by the way, the bad pub was deserved, okay? But I'm just saying it's gotten better. I was just there, and I love it. But anyway, more to the point, we were birthed from that radio station, KGO, big news talk radio station. And we came here when they went away, and we brought our crew. And so that was the beginning of the show. We did a 2-hour live show there. We're doing a 2-hour live show every day here, 2 to 4 in the East. It's 11 to 1 in the West. And we've built a community here that I'm so excited about. And I've seen that community evolve in really exciting ways. So thank you for being here. Smash the like button if you would. It's a little thing in YouTube that is important, and the algorithms.
It with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. Smash it like a boss, baby.
Smash it with your iron rod.
And subscribe to the show. It also is free, and that's a great way to keep us in your feed, and we'll continue to try to give you information and takes on what's happening. By the way, there's a major technology development today. I will get to it, and I have a couple of clean takes on that from those who know a lot more about technology than I do. We'll get to that a little bit later, probably, I'm going to say in about 25 minutes. But first, I have to make way for a big name. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
One of the people who we were able to convince to come over here with us is the longtime political pundit and analyst, and now he is the lead political analyst at iHeart Radio. He's also the analyst for all things politics in California and beyond across the CBS television stations. How about it? He joins us on Mondays. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Hey, Gary.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark. How are you, buddy?
I'm well, sir. Thank you for being here. So let me get to some federal government stuff. The Pete Hegseth nomination got through, since we've spoken last. The other controversial nominations are coming up. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm seeing and reading that there may be some pushback on Tulsi. Also, RFK Jr. may face some headwinds, but they're doing some things tactically, it seems, to try to drag those nominees over the finish line.
Well, I think the important thing to note is that, for one thing, they started, day one of the Trump administration last Monday. I don't know if we'll ever see this again. a 99-0 confirmation for Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. So that was a big win, and has proven even the last week to be important when you're dealing with countries like Colombia. We may not have time to get into that, but there's that. Hegseth got across. He got across just barely. I mean, it took the vice president's vote. J.D. Vance came to the Senate chambers to break a 50-50 tie that got Hegseth in after 3 senators, including notably Mitch McConnell, said no. But this is a big week, this one coming up, because you're going to have RFK hearings. He's got to appear, by the way, before 2 committees. You're going to have Tulsi Gabbard, which is the one everybody says is probably the most dicey. And then Patel, who's going to be, the one that's been nominated now for Department of Justice. So this is going to be a big, intense week in the confirmation process on the Hill.
It's interesting to me that Hegseth could make it through, as you say, just squeak by. By the way, in modern history of DOD heads, I don't think there's ever been one that close. I mean, they're always,
that's right.
There might be 10 senators laying out, or 8 or 5 or even fewer. But, the fact that there was so much resistance to this guy tells you something. I don't know that it matters in the end, but I mean, history is, it stands aside in history is that. But it's interesting that he then, having squeaked by, gets in, and yet there is all of this talk about these others. Can you just put some specifics on Tulsi Gabbard, for example?
Yeah, well, let's go down the list real quick and say that RFK reportedly is looking in pretty good shape. He has met with a lot of Democratic senators as well as Republicans, and apparently assuaged a lot of concerns. There will certainly be some hard questions about everything from vaccinations on down the list. But word right now that RFK looks like he's likely to be confirmed. Patel for Department of Justice, likewise. There's going to be some hard questioning, but the feeling is right now that probably Republicans on the Hill are saying he's probably getting through. Tulsi Gabbard is going to be a tougher slog. It's interesting because she, of course, already served in the House as a Democrat, right? So you would think, I mean, just on the surface, say, wait a minute, what gives her? Okay, shouldn't she have an easier go than the others? I think, frankly, part of the politics that's making it tough for Gabbard is the switch from Democrat to Republican, right? I mean, that is in the modern era, and I'm going to say real modern, like the last 10 years, that's a big no-no, right? You sort of choose sides, take out your sword, and that's it. So I personally think behind the scenes, that's making it tougher for her. Democrats saying, listen, we don't like the fact that you're on Team Trump now at all. And so there's some positions she's taken in the past that have people, raising concerns. But let's not forget that, let's say 5 years ago, she was something of a media darling. It's hard to remember that, but she was seen as, somebody who was kind of a truth teller, so to speak, out there in the public arena. But right now, she's going to be in her big-time microscope come her confirmation hearing this week.
She speaks very well in front of a microphone. She's been a very effective spokesperson for her position. She ran well, actually, when she was primarying in the general election on the Democratic side, as you point out. So she does come across well, and she's now had many more at bats as a Fox. I think she has a show, or she's a regular analyst there. So she's an interesting story. So all of those things are sort of superficial. She comes across well, she speaks well on camera, et cetera. When you actually get into her knowledge of the this world of intelligence that she's going to be in charge of, she gets pretty thin pretty fast, doesn't she, Gary?
Yeah, I actually was kind of surprised that she got that nod from Trump. I'm not exactly sure the backstory about that, why that versus other positions. I expected, and I think most did, she'd be offered something in the Trump administration. Interestingly, the Director of National Intelligence is not a household name or word, right? I mean, it's really kind of a behind-the-scenes position. A lot of work with the National Security Council in the White House, a lot of work with intelligence agencies like the CIA and others, but it's not really an upfront position. So I'm not exactly sure why that was the one put out there for Gabbard. But she's going to have some, as Ricky Ricardo used to say, some splaining to do. And, I hate to say this, but it seems like in the modern era, Mark, you know how this goes. There needs to be a sacrificial lamb in the confirmation process. It just seems like that's the way it goes. I mean, was Gates enough? He withdrew his name, of course, before even being put before a committee. So I don't know whether that's going to satisfy, partisans who it just seems like in our day, there's got to be a pound of flesh to pay in this confirmation process these days. There's just no getting around that. Is Tulsi Gabbard going to be that person? I think it's yet to be seen.
Brett says problem with Tulsi isn't that she switched sides; it's that she promotes pro-Russian disinformation and conspiracy theories. Yeah, well, she's certainly in the Assad thing, and yeah. Now, I want to get you to the Friday night massacre of the inspectors general. I'll try to just take this chronologically. We'll start on Friday night when Trump fired at least 12 inspectors general, right? And then I'll get to the chronology that brought him to really a war of words and threats with the nation of Colombia. We'll get to that in a second. But apparently I didn't know this, Gary, but apparently when you fire inspectors general, you need to give Congress 30 days advance notice of this, right? And
that's exactly right. And that's why, by the way, Lindsey Graham over the weekend said, look, he really should have given us a 30 days advance notice.
So when Lindsey Graham says that, who is, the golfing pal with Trump, it means that they're at least flustered by it. I don't know that in the end it'll matter, though. He's going to get rid of these inspectors general.
Yeah, even if he gives a 30-day notice, there's really nothing Congress can do. I mean, they can squawk about it, right? But the president's going to eventually get that to happen. Typically what happens, of course, is a request is made when a president comes in for many positions. And it's not uncommon for inspectors general to get that same form letter, right? Hey, new administration, we'd like you to tender your resignation. We have others in mind, right? That's not uncommon in a variety of positions. But, unfortunately, you used the term at the beginning. Unfortunately, this came across, as a Friday night massacre when you released 12 of them without notice. I'm not exactly sure why Trump felt the need to skirt Congress in this thing. I mean, it would have been simple enough for his chief of staff to put out the word. Here's the list. It's 30 days notice. In 30 days, they're gone.
Right. From a bottom line standpoint, nothing changes. I mean, and so again, just to reiterate something that everyone is probably aware of, but these are the watchdogs, so they're going to be gone. The Inspector General will be gone from the Department of Agriculture, Commerce, Defense, Education, Housing and Urban Development. All of the different agencies will be Interior, Labor, Transportation, Veterans Affairs. No longer will they have Inspectors General there. The EPA and the SBA, also nothing. So this is a substantial decision he's made. There's no political price to pay for this, though. This feels to me like something that'll evaporate. And people may not even remember it from Friday night. But the fact that it happened on Friday night, Gary, isn't nothing, right?
Yeah, no, it's obvious it was done in the dead of the night to start the weekend. You know how this goes on news cycles, Mark. I mean, it was intended to be buried in everything else. And in fact, it already has been, to your point, in a couple of weeks, especially in a few days when we get these big major cabinet nomination hearings. I think it will be forgotten in a sense. But I think it was a mistake politically for Trump to do it. You don't want to be ruffling feathers amongst senators in particular that you need to confirm your nominees. They're not, some at least aren't happy about it. Others are more resigned, kind of what you said, what was going to happen anyway. But I just think it was a political misstep, too rash, too brash. But, it is what it is now. It's not going to be retreated on. The other thing to note is that, you typically don't release them en masse like that. That was the other thing that looked a little, heavy-handed. So, I think Trump and his team, some on his team are going to be more aware of this. You got to be careful. You only want to, throw so many darts at the board to kind of miss the board completely before your own team starts saying, hey, wait a minute, So will he get away with this? Yeah. Is there a big price to be paid politically? No. Are people taking note of it and saying, don't do this every day? Yes.
Inspectors General are charged with rooting out government waste, fraud, and abuse and preventing misconduct, said Senator Elizabeth Warren. President Trump is dismantling checks on his power and paving the way for widespread corruption. If you put that to the side, let me just ask you about something that Project 2025 strategized around. and that is the draining of money to all of these various government agencies that they kind of consider the administrative state, the deep state. We're going to choke them off by essentially eliminating their funding. Could this have been a brick in that wall?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see who he appoints as new inspectors general and how closely, if at all, is there any communication with the Doge team? You know what I mean? Which sort of has its own, I don't know, you could call it informal inspector general role, right? I mean, it's supposed to be looking at all the agencies, not only their fiscal matters, but their actual, tasks and evaluating those, which is typically an inspector general role, right? And I think the other part about it is, how closely is Congress going to be drilling down into some of these agencies? Sometimes it's been kind of hands off until some big problem erupts. But I think right now, all the cards are on the table. I mean, certainly Doge is part of that, but I think there's a lot of Republican members of Congress who themselves have said, look, it's not going to be business as usual. Even these agencies that are run by Trump heads, we're going to be looking with a much closer microscope at what you're doing, what it's costing, and what the actual benefits are.
It's interesting, too. Doge will be reconstituted, it would seem. They may even move Elon into the White House and all of these. I'm going to get into that this week and in other conversations, but it's still what you're talking about, which is that Musk is very much in the president's ear about those areas of government that require funding, should get funding, and those that are wasteful. So take me to this Colombian thing. Gustavo Petro, a president's name that I didn't even know before this, I will confess. He is the president of Colombia, and he refused the American deportees that were sent there by military aircraft. Now, the initial back and forth brought Trump to, great, if you don't let us land there and deport these illegals, we will impose on you 25% tariffs. And that seemed to immediately produce a kind of change in Petro's general disposition. Ultimately, he did allow the planes to land. Can you speak to this situation, how it might play out also elsewhere?
Yeah, well, I think there's really two or three big parts of this that are important to note. One is, when they are your nationals, if you don't want planes from the U.S. coming to land and they, have entered another nation's borders, U.S. or anybody else's, you better come up with some kind of a plan to have them come back, right? I don't know how you choose to do it. Send your own airlines out there. There's even talk about him now sending his presidential plane to go pick these folks up. But you can't just say no if they're your own national citizens. They cross the border into any other country illegally, and then to say, well, we're not taking them back, because they weren't. The president of Colombia said they weren't treated respectfully, etc. Well, you better have a plan B. That's sort of number one. Secondly, you got to be careful, that your dog is big enough if you're going to put him in a fight, because immediately when Trump announced the 25% tariff, the Colombian president within an hour said, okay, well, you know what? We're giving you a 25% tariff on U.S. goods and services, to which, a lot of Americans, and political leaders said, oh, okay, well, we might have to pay more for X, Y, Z. But the reality, if you just look at the trade balance between the two nations, Colombia far more dependent. The U.S. is Colombia's biggest trading partner, and you got to be careful, right? You make a threat like that, which, by the way, he backed off on just hours later, said, okay, we'll let him in. I think his own people said, hey, wait a minute, that may not be the best plan. So I think that's the other thing is that, it does appear that the other side, that is the Colombian side of the negotiations or equation, sort of realized their hand wasn't as strong to play as they thought it might have been.
Yeah, it appears exactly as you suggested that, they folded like a pup tent right away. And I mean, I do think it's sort of one of those things where you feel bullied. And when you're bullied, you push back, perhaps reflexively, when the reality is, as you suggested, you may not be in a position to push back. But I think of the Mexican president. she, with the Gulf of America stuff, and I mean, she did kind of make fun of it and push back, and Trump hasn't really said much about her since.
Well, I think if you want to compare those, I think the interesting part of it is just what you got into a little bit, Mark, which is the details. So what was her response to the Gulf of America thing? She got in front of a big giant map and said, well, as a matter of fact, we're going to start calling you all, hey, Northern Mexico, at least the southern border states, right? They used to be controlled by Mexico, of course, in the past. Now, see, the thing about it is that was sort of a rhetorician's, or a public spokesperson's kind of approach to it. Get in front of a map, say, oh, ha, ha, well, we're going to say, that's very different than saying you're going to slap 25% tariffs on your northern neighbor, right? And I think that's, if there's a lesson to come out of this, it's like, okay, you can have pushback, and it's clear the Mexican government is not going to recognize, the Gulf of America. They've made that clear. I don't expect them to do it, right? In fact, the AP, interestingly, said, okay, we're not going to recognize that either because it's in international waters, so to speak. So good luck with that. But it's a very different thing than taking a hardline policy prescriptive like Colombia did with your biggest trading partner. Does that make sense? You got to, in other words, the international relations folks would say calibrating your response is very important.
Well, I think calibrating your response, and also what you said, which is you have to know, how big your dog is or whatever. You have to know that there's a little more heft, I think, in the case of Mexico than there is in the case of Colombia. So I think both those things are true. In the next last minute, I just wanted to ask you something else that happened. Again, it was a fire hose of stuff happening as Trump took office. He rolls back the prohibitions on executive branch employees accepting major gifts from lobbyists and ditching bans on lobbyists seeking executive branch jobs or vice versa. He's rolled that back for at least 2 years. It's a strange thing given the fact that he again, didn't mention Drain the Swamp this time. Drain the Swamp was the 2016 run, but these ethics rules are being aggressively rolled back. And of course, we know that he has launched a cryptocurrency token, that Melania has one, that there are a number of different revenue streams, to be polite. I would call them grifts, that are going on concurrent with this administration that he benefits from. So he's really like an ongoing master of many different revenue streams, all of which I'd suggest would fly in the face of existing ethics were we enforcing them. But now we don't have to worry about enforcing them because he does seem to be rolling them back. Again, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say, and let's add to that the House Republicans meeting at the Trump Doral golf course today for 3 days, right? I mean, we went through that before, remember, in Trump version 1, when people, are there going to be meetings held at his Washington, D.C. hotel, and what's the financial implications? It seems like that's kind of water under the bridge. What I want to say quickly about that, and I do feel like I need to say 30 seconds about Trump and Newsom on the tarmac on Friday, Mark. But let's just quickly on this one. I think that the rubber's going to meet the road here in the next 6 to 12 months. Trump's got to be careful, and I'm sure his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, knows this. You don't want what are relatively minor things. In other words, did some lower person in the administration get tickets to a football game? You don't want that to overshadow the big stuff. And that's the risk with some of this ethics stuff. You have to be careful about it. Even what seems minor on the surface to start with can become, as you know, a big story. And that's what I'm sure people inside his team in the White House are saying, Mr. President, let's just be aware of what this could bring in terms of attention that we don't want in a year or two. So that's yet to be sorted out. I do want to quickly say that Trump
give us a moment. Go ahead.
Yeah, Trump and Newsom real quickly surprised a lot of people when, I mean, look at that. It looked like, I don't know, bros getting together, as we say in the modern terminology, right? And there was handshaking, there was backslapping, there was smiling, conversing. It was completely the opposite of what everybody expected. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs watching this relationship very carefully in the next couple weeks and months as the LA situation unfolds. But I will tell you this, either one or both of them was a master at saying, this ain't going to benefit us. Let's just cool it, at least for today, right? Because compared to the rest of the fireworks, that happened that day in terms of Trump and Bass going at each other and all, these guys look like they were best of friends.
No, it's very, very true. And it's smart politics, of course. I also wonder, and maybe you have a thought on this, when Trump gets back to the bubble where essentially the echo chamber of hate, I'm wondering to what extent there will be a renewal of these various demands of changes in California, and not even changes in California. It's not even things related to fire policy or water policy in California. They want immigration policy in California attached to any kind of funds that would come for relief.
Yeah, well, at least what Trump mentioned specifically last week was a voter ID, right? Wanted voter ID in California, which of course has nothing to do with the fire deal. And this, of course, is what we're going to be ferreting out in the first few weeks and months of the Trump administration. How much of this kind of stuff is just throw that bowl of spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks, get some attention for it, and how much of it is actually going to be implemented? In other words, are there going to be real, quote unquote, new conditions tied to California aid? You sure didn't hear that when he was on the ground last Friday. So that chapter yet to be written. We'll be following it closely for sure.
Gary, so appreciate you. Thank you for making time for us every Monday. It really was a pleasure, and I look forward to next week as well. It's I'll tell you honestly, it all comes at us so fast. Sometimes I forget, like the agenda must change almost on an hourly basis, so I appreciate you keeping us posted. Thank you. Gary Dietrich, everybody. Bye, Gary. Gary's segment is sponsored by Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. If you're relocating to or from Northern California, we have a lot of great Northern California listeners and viewers. If you need a highly respected real estate professional, let me tell you, Bill Campbell is a great place to start, and he's a great place to finish right there. Bill Campbell at Remax Gold. Call or text Bill 530-448-7474, 530-448-7474. Again, Bill Campbell, Remax Gold.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. Well, I have time, I believe, because I am a true professional, and I've left enough time to actually get to one other story. Kim, I know you're thinking news, but I'm going to do news.
Do what you got to do.
After Heidi Cuda. Heidi's coming on right after the top of the hour. But before that, there was a major thing that happened in tech. And I know we talk politics, we talk news, and this is important. This affects a lot of stuff. This world of technology and AI, as you know, it's revolutionary, but there is a battle within AI that is being played out. There's a hugely expensive part of AI, development of AI. And this morning, we wake up to news that China, and this happened over the weekend, actually. It really has happened over the last few days. But China has an artificial intelligence firm called Deepseek. And they built a bunch of AI models that are more cost-effective than the U.S. models. And they've released them on an open source basis, meaning you can use the technology. Now, Deepseek, instead of building out more raw computing power to kind of train its models, it's focused on efficiency. And it's done it better than any other U.S. company. And the reason this is also extraordinary is that they did it on a wildly skinny budget. They did it for less than $6 million. Now, in America, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, they're throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at this. If the Chinese were actually able to build this AI model open source, we can all use it and have used it. It's number one in the App Store, Deepseek. Then it is a huge quake. I mean, a titanic memo to American companies. So it affects the American stock market, it affects the future of these technology companies, and it affects the way we look at AI. So everybody's looking at this Deepseek. And I should just mention that this is incredibly embarrassing for U.S. companies on some level for the reasons that I've just articulated, but also there was a hack of Deepseek, wasn't there, Kim, I think earlier today, and now it's been shut down to all America, unless you're a Chinese user, because it comes from China. I don't think that they will let you on the platform. Isn't that right? As of this moment?
They had to limit this access to this platform because they were getting these malicious attacks on Deepseek, which it's interesting because I've never even heard of this thing before. And you wonder if it was so successful because it was built on the backs of the technology that American companies poured millions of dollars into, or what? I don't know.
So this is a key question that Kim's asking. One of the questions that people have who are involved in this field is, are they using the chips that have been generated in this country that have been embargoed from Chinese use? The answer is they're saying, I think they're keeping it kind of vague and they're sort of saying no, but if indeed it was done on those smart chips that came from America, then it will have huge repercussions on down the way. I mean, there are a number of, it'll have economic repercussions, it'll have diplomatic repercussions, et cetera. But the hyperscalers of, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, these are the people who are inhabiting that world. They are driving the stock market up. You understand? Because the stock market is essentially buying the future. They're buying the faith in AI that is America or Google or Meta generated, if you will. But what this breakthrough is saying is, hey guys, we're out where you are, and we did it for a fraction. I mean, an infinitesimal fraction of the cost. Go ahead, Tony. Play me a little bit on this. I just want to bring people up to speed on this. And here's a guy asking the same question. Stop for a second. Stop for a second. Stop. So he asked the question sort of that maybe everybody's asking, like, did you even know about this company before today, before this morning, before it tanked the stock market? Go ahead now, please, Tony.
Did you know what Deepseek was before 12 or 18 hours ago?
I did, yes. And
so what did you know about them 2 days ago?
That it is a competitor in the LLM space. They've been training their own model, and it's used mostly in the East Asian region.
Okay, what I learned, thank you Zero Hedge for this, from Morgan Brown at Dropbox, is basically they've said, we're not going to be as perfect, as pristine as the others, out to 32 decimal points. We're just going to get it done out to 0.0000008 decimal points. Is that what this is all about? Is they're not going to be perfect?
I think there's more to it than just, using the fewer floating point operations than OpenAI and Anthropic and others. And look, in this case, they basically focused on hardware efficiency, using the hardware in the most efficient fashion. They had the benefit of all these LLMs being out there. They use Meta Llama as a reference point. It's another open source model. And they figured out a way to do this most efficiently than everyone else. I mean, everyone is focused on scale right now. They focused on hardware efficiency.
Paul, the Llama.
There you go. Stop right there. That's the last thing he said is exactly what I was saying before, right? That Meta and all these other companies, Google and Amazon, they're focusing on scalability. They want to get it out there, right? And they're focusing on efficiency, this Chinese model, at least what we know of it so far. And they did it for a little more than $5 million. I mean, again, that's not even a rounding error. It's so little. In the grand scheme of hundreds of billions being thrown at AI by these major tech companies in this country. D. Elliott, sounds to me that China is already taking advantage of our screwed up administration and the distraction of the tech bros trying to run the government. I mean, it's Yeah, it's interesting that way. Tony, we have one other, I think we have one other piece. This is, if you want an optimistic view of things, this is the optimist giving analysis this morning.
There are leaders like Elon Musk and Scale AI CEO that have basically come out and said they probably have 50,000 H100 GPUs, maybe more. And so it's not obvious right now that everything they're sharing is exactly accurate. And it's not unlike China to potentially try to play a little bit of psyops with Americans and the markets to see how we would react. I think the progress is good, though. As Stacey said, look, if we can get this Jevons paradox thing where we get more compute, it's not going to stop and people aren't going to be like, we need no more. What's going to end up happening is companies are going to move faster. And I'll make one more point, is that ultimately we've looked at the possible bubble around AI, around too much cost on CapEx and not enough consumption or revenue generated by these ISVs, platform companies. Well, guess what? If we can create models more inexpensively, if we can use compute more efficiently, these SaaS providers, the Salesforces, the ServiceNows, the Microsofts, those companies that we're saying they're not driving enough revenue, they'll be able to build their models cheaper. They'll be able to create solutions with less overhead expense, and they're going to drive more EPS. So I just think the market's completely missing this one. And the fact that we're believing China just with their word, to me, I think that needs a little more inspection.
So there you go. Thank you for that, Tony. That's, the optimistic part of it, saying, hey, they did all of this. It might not be true because it's coming out of China. They're not always the most dependable. But he's also saying, but if it is true, or even a big portion of it is true, we can build on it. It's an open AI system. So many of these companies to which I've referred can build on it. But it's still, you shouldn't have to be building on their technology if you've thrown hundreds of billions of dollars at it, at Meta, at Google, et cetera. And this will affect the markets because there are a bunch of investors, as I say, who are believing in this, and they're throwing money at it, and they're going to essentially desert, at least with their money, a lot of these various tech companies if they seem as though they are wasting the money in an AI effort that's not getting them to the finish line. So that was big. It was happening in a huge way early this morning. When the markets opened, the markets really took a hit. I think the markets now have stabilized a bit, Kim. I haven't looked, but I'm just kind of sort of seeing in the chat. Rev P says S&P is not even down 2%. NASDAQ is down 3.74%. It's a well-needed pullback. Rev P says, buy the dip, everybody. Buy the dip.
What?
I know. The Rev is telling you to buy the dip.
NASDAQ has been down over 600 points at times today. S&P 500 has also been lower. Dow Jones Industrial Average trading higher after being in the red to start the session.
Yeah, so we'll... Yeah, and anyway, so it's been I'll take a much-needed hit of coffee.
Coffee today.
We went for just a pot of coffee. Courtney made it this morning. It's very, very delicious. It is Coachella Valley coffee. And I tell you, with every sip, with every sip, I see a brighter future for all of us with every sip. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the place you will find teas, you will find coffees, the best coffee on earth. They are our sponsor, but I was saying it before they were our sponsor. I've been drinking this coffee for literally years. I'm just so honored that they'd be part of the show. Use our discount code, though, MARK-T, for 10% off. So when you check out at CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, MARK-T at checkout. There is the, I forget, I think, is this Never Been Anything Like It? Is that what this says? Never Been Anything Like It? I'm drinking the, yeah, this Never Been Anything, I think you can get one of these at the, there's never been anything like this. Yeah, that's right. It's,
there's never been anything like this.
Yeah, right. There you go. Thank you, Mr. President. So this is the, can't get enough. Keep it right over here. I have an electronic warmer of the mug, Kim, which is it's not AI technology per se, but for me, it's the most important technology. Keeps the mug of coffee warm.
That's right.
So again, this is all organic coffee from women-owned farms, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Thank you.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Use that discount code, though. You'll get 10% off. What about this? Beth Farmer, 1999, says, keep telling the truth about what the feds are doing. Mark and Kim. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Well, Fibonacci strikes again, says Luis. I spent less on eggs this weekend because there weren't any. Costco and Sam's both out of eggs. Genius strategy to reduce cost, LOL. Well, thanks, Luis, for that. Luis is an OG in Southern California, supporter of this show. I will say this, bird flu is going to make eggs much more expensive. They are slaughtering entire populations of birds right now because the bird flu is real. And I presume we're going to talk more about it. We've talked a lot about it, but there will be more. But if you just care about the price of eggs, it will be affected by all of that. Kathy Crowell, thank you for the $5 super chat. Kathy says, roses are red, oranges are brown. That's because Trump is a crazy clown. Well, that I see. I get it. I mean, it's straightforward. Kathy goes for the, Not a supporter of the new president then, Kathy, is what I'm getting? Okay. Well. Mars says AI tech bubble investments popping the same way self-driving car company bubble investments came and went in the 2010s. That's Mars' view of what's happening with the tech bubble news today. I mean, again, it kind of recovered, but that's a big, I think it's a big story that we're going to hear more about. And the rise of Chinese technology is a massively important, well, you don't have to look much beyond TikTok to see how important it is. And the tie between emerging technologies and spyware, that is the thing that you're going to hear way more about. That's the reason that TikTok was KO'd. Remember, Trump was against TikTok the first time when he was president. He was fully against it because he felt it was an infiltration of America's security data, essentially security data on Americans. National security would be violated by allowing TikTok to exist. And now he's the TikTok savior. Well, in the same sense, this app, this AI app that came from China, #1 in the App Store. Americans are scooping this stuff up. And so that becomes a question of security if you look at everything as potentially spyware. And the last thing to say, and then I want to get to Heidi, is that we had on 3 different occasions, we had one of the world's leading logistics experts. Remember, Jonathan Rosenthal came on, and he talked about drone production. And he talked about the fact that 2/3 of the drones used in America are built in China with Chinese technology. And in that Chinese technology is a data stream that goes back to China. So they can actually track location information on these drones. I'll have him on again. But when we look at all of these emerging technologies that are becoming so insanely popular, you have to look at the spyware component and how legitimately concerned we should be and how much of it's just kind of a Red Scare stuff, you know? But that's all to be continued. All right, smash the like button as we continue here.
The Mark Thompson Show.
There are few people that I have greater fondness for than our next guest. She is an Emmy Award-winning investigative reporter. She's been recognized in so many different forums for her work. She is someone who has international presence, the co-host of Radicalized Truth Survives. That's a podcast. Her Bette Dangerous Substack magazine is read in 81 countries. She is just top of the game. So happy to have her visit with us once in a while. How about it for Heidi Cuda, everybody?
Oh, what a lovely intro.
Well, it's true. You are just so good at what you do. And I love that you have the coffee. You know,
I was thinking maybe we could just spend the time talking about coffee. That would be so much more pleasant. So much more pleasant.
You know, when we drink a cup of the Coachella Valley coffee here, we do have the...
You have the official theme song.
Oh, it's such a piece of heaven. Such a piece of heaven. I'll send you some, actually, as it's my gift to you, because you came on the short notice that we that we put the flare up to you on short notice, because you've done a lot of stuff, and I want to just kind of, for people who may not realize, you've done a lot of stuff in the face of this administration. You've done a lot of stuff that makes noise. That, you know, you talk about ways in which there can be a resistance, there can be a tactical resistance, a legislative resistance, a people's resistance. I wonder if you can speak to what can be done and what you sort of see as the priorities going forward.
That's so great. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I was just listening in, learning so much from you guys. So it's quite wonderful to hear the work that you're doing, Mark. So I am kind of taking a global view of things. I'm in Europe right now, traveling around, talking to people, expressing my concerns. One of the things I think that is a global concern is complacency. I think people see what I call these brozillas, these broligarchs, and think that nothing can be done. But we have to remember, we've been here before in world history. We have seen when people gather together, over greed and, in some cases, white supremacy, etc., to grab power. And we have seen people fight back, unfortunately, often, with global wars. But what I'm so inspired by are all the countries, like, for example, Romania, which just, fought back against Russian interference in their country. We have the country of Georgia, which is in multiple weeks now, even into months, fighting back on the streets against Russian control of their country. We have Poland doing crash rearmament. What I can say is democracies all over the world right now are under siege. We have seen that in the last decade, more and more countries have gone authoritarian. So nobody is really immune to this stuff, but I'm inspired when I see people fighting back. But I'm also very concerned about complacency. And I think part of it is people who did not want this administration knew what it meant. Of course, a majority did not get us here. It was a minority, don't know what to do. So what I recommend people do is start small acts of resistance. Everybody can get Post-its. Everybody can write memos on Post-its and leave them in elevators and bathrooms and wherever there are public spaces. I have friends who actually bought a stamper and it says, "I'm not giving up and you shouldn't either." And I think this is so beautiful because these are lessons, of course, we've learned from previous wars. I think that there has to be a united solidarity among the majority of people in America that didn't want this, but we're not there yet. We are still sort of unable to address the fact that all of this has been blanketed by information warfare. People have been siloed off in their own media spheres, and it's designed to keep people apart. But united, once we can figure out how to push past that and unite the pro-democracy forces in America, I think that will be very important. But start small. Sometimes it's as simple as just deciding, okay, I'm going to join a local indivisible group in my neighborhood and start there. But not everybody can do everything, but we can all each do something small and begin there.
Bravo. I think so many movements, so many acts of activism begin in those incremental ways. Sometimes, I come out of a world of very close to the world of animal rights, and it's very frustrating. It's very awful. And the atrocities perpetrated against animals worldwide are unspeakably horrible. And sometimes you can be so frustrated and bummed out with that. I'm just using it as an example that you go, it's not enough that, you get meatless Mondays or whatever. We need to shoot for bigger things. Well, you can shoot for bigger things or hope for bigger things, but incremental improvement is improvement. And as you've just suggested and reminded me, increments here and increments there, put them all together, and it's more than just incremental. I mean, you have actual movement. And I love that you pointed to sort of the worldwide way in which there is a movement growing. I have to say it, though, Heidi, it comes in the face of what we've seen worldwide as well in the renewal of some authoritarian regimes and power.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to be in Europe is I did not want to be there for the inauguration. Again, I couldn't do it. On November 5th, when I saw him stand up on stage with his son Barron. I'm like, I'm not doing this again. I'm not spending 24 hours a day on Twitter telling the media what it's not doing. One of the things people can do is do what your crew is doing here and support independent media. We are working in the face of grave peril, and there's nothing better than taking care of independent investigative reporters by supporting their Substacks, etc. Mark shows a great thing to be doing, and I love all the comments. It seems like you've got a very smart audience that really gets what's going on. I have to say, because I'm here, I'm also, I'm gripped with sorrow. I'm literally like going between being grateful to not be in America at this moment because we've seen the shock and awful of this week, but I'm also fearful of that complacency I talked about, because I'm right now in the United Kingdom, and just like we did with Biden, where after he was voted in, we kind of, breathed a sigh of relief. He began the cleanup job. He began the, incredible labor of democracy. And yet we didn't address the information war. So we know how the story ends. And right now in the UK, they have a Labour government in its first Labour government in years. And my concern is that complacency I talked about will not alert people in time to what's happening. And right now, Elon Musk, who had an outside role in the outcome of the 2024 election in America, he is threatening to put $100 million into the Reform UK party, which is Nigel Farage's party. And right now, I just learned in a recent poll, the Reform UK party is only 1 percentage point behind Labour. That is too close for comfort. So I'm here talking to as many people as I can to make sure they don't wait like we did to engage in the fight. We didn't have enough time. Kamala Harris did not have a long enough runway. Again, we all know how the story ended, but there are places right now in Europe where the story can turn out differently, and they can have a heroic population rising up against this technocracy, which, as I look at it and I look at history, it seems like the goal is to create a new feudalism where we are in the role of serfs while they own all the money, the power, the resources. They're in the extraction business. They're extracting resources, empathy, anything that they can. And that is not what I would like for the future of our world. And I know your viewers don't want that either.
Now, how could any of us want it? I mean, we'll all end up serfs, but I love the way you boil it down, because that's exactly what's happening. And the oligarchy and the oligarchical takeover seems complete in that the levers of power in Washington and our government do seem to be controlled by the biggest money at the table, and that is those tech bros that you talk about. I mean, it's remarkable to see the about face that someone like David Sachs has done with the idea somehow that you could be viewing cryptocurrency as a total scam 2 years ago, and now you're head of that digital currency and protecting America's rights to digital currencies 2 years later with the new administration, when we know that will be one of the great gateways to dark money flowing into the administration, untraceable.
Yeah. So anybody who actually understands the world of cryptocurrency will tell you that is it's a fabulous way to, be a money launderer or an extortionist or a kidnapper. And, the fact is that it is actually something that is designed to destroy democracies from within as they destroy fiat currency. So, the fact that that is just one more data point on how this administration, which I call a regime, is actually installed to destroy all our democratic protections. And again, I think that people who voted for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did not know necessarily they were voting for billionaires to deliver them to austerity. But as their neighbors disappear and their, health insurance, Medicare is taken away from them, I think they will figure it out. And again, taking a global view, I have documented 22 countries that have been targeted much in the same way we have with hybrid warfare and politicians that are pro-authoritarian. And I just want to bring up one little story about the country of Moldova. In 2016, they had a parallel election to us. A woman who was maligned and, treated as if she were some witch to burn. And she lost in 2016, but she came back and she won in 2020 and she won in 2024. And during that time, they had their own Elon. His name is even Elon Shore. He was an oligarch pro-Russian who owned much of the real estate, did a whole bunch of financial scams. And what did little Moldova do? They seized his assets. They prosecuted him in absentia. They doubled the length of his prison term in absentia. And where does he live? He now lives in Russia, where he just got citizenship. And from Russia, he's still trying to meddle in their elections. And I say this because we have, for many, many years, particularly on my podcast, warned about Elon Musk being a problem, warned about Peter Thiel buying his way into the levers of power. And all this time prayed and hoped that we would see justice when it came to Trump and his myriad crimes. And we didn't do what even little Moldova did. And I just bring this up because I want people to know that where to apply the pressure. We are watching people who are criming in public and acting like there's nothing that we can do because there was a judicial coup. It's not very American to think there's nothing you can do. Again, start small, build up, but people will see your activism and be inspired by it. So when they see that you're willing to take steps, that will help lift other people up to be more courageous, because obeying in advance is not an option if we want to retain any semblance of democracy.
Yeah, the obedience that has been offered in advance is it's stupefying. It's remarkable. I mean, you're seeing it in. So I get the tech bros doing it because they're all doing it. It's a means to an end. They're all trying to sidle up to Trump because they can make a fortune off of him. So Bezos, Zuckerberg, the Google bros, and the Saxes, and all of them, I get it. I get why they're there. I mean, I don't like it, and I don't. I think it's all loathsome, but I understand it. The media companies, we lose track of these news organizations. ABC News settles with Trump on a suit that's utterly absurd, where he sues for the Stephanopoulos interview. And things that Stephanopoulos has said on the show, sues for $15 million, and ABC got just easier to settle with them. Plus, we have regulatory stuff. We don't want the government hassling us on licensing, et cetera. So they write the check, and then that's just the beginning. Then we see CBS News do the same thing. Yes. Trump sues for the CBS interview with Kamala Harris. Again, utterly baseless. It's a shakedown is what's going on. And they go, just write the check to him. The shakedown works because we have regulatory legislation that we need from the government, and we need to be on good terms with Trump. So you have again, as I say, this pre-surrender to everything that's going on, and it does leave you in kind of a downcast way, because those are information platforms. That's the difference there.
Well, when Apple paid the inaugural VIG, that was a real low. Right. You figure Zuckerberg's going to pay the VIG. You figure the others are. But when Apple did, it was like, oh man, that kind of felt like sort of the final kick in the teeth in this moment. But we have to also, again, take a look at what other countries are doing. France arrested their techno king. They arrested Pavel Durov, who runs Telegram, because there were a lot of crimes being committed on that platform. So again, if we just would sort of stop navel gazing and look around to other countries, we could get some really good ideas on things that we can do. This week, I'm going to be writing about Poland, because Poland has been there before, seen this before, and they are standing up to it, as is Finland. So there are countries that we can look to for inspiration. And, it's okay. Right now, people, I always say despair is the enemy of action, but it's okay to take a day or two and pause and just,
and cry.
Practice self-care. I cry.
Okay.
I mean, self-care is so vital, because we're going to need you in the fight, and there will come a day when the heroes begin to emerge. And as Mark just delineated, you're not going to find it on corporate media. So it goes back to what I said earlier: start small and back the independents who are trustworthy. Many of them are historians on Substack. Timothy Snyder comes to mind, his wife, Dr. Marcy Shore. There's so many incredible people where we can learn from. And what I've been doing to be of service is reading history books and reporting them to my Substack community, because from history, as Marcy says, it doesn't tell you what's going to happen, but it offers suggestions. So we know what can happen, and we certainly know what happens when people don't resist. Nothing good.
We'll post your Substack under this video, and also I will, at the end of the conversation, will of course give it a big hit, because there is a lot great that can come from the Bette Dangerous Substack. There you go. You see it. Tony's got it up now. But as I say, we'll post a link to it. I wanted to talk to you just quickly, because I know you've commented on this, and it concerns me immensely that many of these organizations to which we've become dependent, I'm talking about health organizations like the CDC, and you could argue CDC, NIH, et cetera, they do good work. There's some stuff that they shouldn't do. There's always government spending that's going on that shouldn't happen. But the fundamental notion behind the CDC, for example, and a lot of NIH research as well, is associated with a consortium of some of the greatest medical minds in the world coming together to try to do better for the planet and to give America a real sense of the public health condition. So with a rising threat, it might be pandemic, it might be epidemic, whatever, that you have the greatest minds around working on it. And so you can trust those organizations and what they say. You make the point repeatedly, and it's such a good one, I think, which is this is the age of mistrust and distrust of government, because these guys are dismantling all of those things that are associated with expertise and all of those things with that are associated with objective, real communication.
Yes. So the overarching thing is that this is an assault on truth. One of the ways you get people to stop believing their eyes and their ears is when you go after the experts, you go after the doctors. There was such a huge campaign against Dr. Fauci, for example. You need people to not trust science anymore, to only trust the leader. That is part of how control works. When the pandemic happened, being a democracy, a robust democracy, we were able to rise to the occasion and, take care of people. But Trump was actually working actively against the science, and hundreds of thousands of people perished and nobody batted an eye. And I often write "Welcome to West Russia" when I'm talking about the times in which we live, because what happens is the consolidation of power. They remove any of the aspects of government that benefit the people, and they then begin to exploit all that and exploit those spoils. And unfortunately, that resulted in a huge disparity between the have and the have-nots, where 35 oligarchs or 110 oligarchs, have 35% of the money. It's just an incredible number. And that's actually from a decade ago from Karen DeWeesha's reporting. So what's happening when Trump comes in, and he is there to be a battering ram against democracy and all of the things that we've come to appreciate. And it's going to pain me to say this, but having a sick and fearful population actually benefits the authoritarian. And so taking away the things that protect us is not a problem for us. And there's a terrible Dickens line about, getting rid of the surplus population. I have to say, the talk is genocidal. The making of camps, the rounding up of people, that is not a loving approach to humanity. That is I don't care what happens to you, as they consolidate power and as they consolidate all the money. And unfortunately, we needed to be protected from these people. We needed to be protected from these billionaires who don't care if what happens to us as they live their life out in their bunkers in New Zealand or Hawaii or anywhere else. So the attacks on science, unfortunately, are very much straight out of the fascist playbook. It's nothing new. It's just new to America.
So well put. Here's something else from Heidi, just a word or two. In an oligarchy, everything is stolen. So it's important to know that in a thriving democracy, when a crisis like a pandemic occurs, we can have a swift response. In an autocracy, people are pretty much left to fend for themselves because the government steals everything.
And that is why I feel such sorrow for people in authoritarian countries, because they didn't ask for it. Many of them were already, for example, look at what happened to Russia. Putin moved in on the internet decades, 15 years before he came here. And I am told that people in Russia literally watch game shows all day while they send their sons off to die in the special military operation, and no one brainwashes themselves. But if all you're getting from media consolidation, we've seen Orban do this in Hungary, if all you're getting is what the state wants you to know, And we know in authoritarian countries, the state is going to lie. Everything coming out of our Oval Office now will be, something that we can't trust. If you ask any reporters in authoritarian countries, they will tell you that they can't trust anything that comes out of their government, and therefore they rely on independent investigative reporters and as well as academics who haven't been co-opted to tell them what's going on. And this is what we are going to have to steel ourselves for, but it doesn't have to be forever if we are willing to actually form the solidarity we need from the pro-democracy forces in America, which are vast. They've just been injured and they've never been occupied before in this way. So it's going to take some time to get their sea legs. But one great thing, often regimes like this collapse under the weight of their own corruption. The pro-democracy people in America have to be there to offer something better when that happens. So, we have our work cut out for us, but it's not completely futile.
Oligarchies always collapse, but it just may take some time because the people will push back at some point. But in the meantime, and that's kind of where we are, in the meantime, a lot of damage can be done. In our last second, I wanted to ask you about the opposing party. You almost put it in quotes. The Democrats, and we have this horribly flawed two-party system, essentially. And I wanted to ask you about sort of the, again, in quotes, the opposition that is on Capitol Hill. They have total control, the Republicans, of everything, right? They have a concierge Supreme Court, they have the Senate, they have the House, and they have a president who, it really, I think you said it, he's a bull in a china shop. He doesn't care. Yeah. So it makes maybe organized resistance legislatively a little harder. But I also think that the Democrats roll over. I mean, I'll just make one point, and then I'll let you speak. The Republicans were the minority for a while. And when Biden wanted his various promotions for military officers, et cetera, there was this one senator, that Tuberville guy, and he stood in the way of all of it. I mean, he stood in the way of it for over a year. You couldn't get promotions through. There was a bunch of stuff that Biden was trying to get done. As I say, generally military promotions and military appointments and reorganization that was literally being held up by one senator. That's the kind of thing you can do in the minority. I don't see anything like that on the Democratic side right now.
No, I will say that the party formerly known as the GOP is a MAGA QAnon cult now. So we can't even look at them like a Republican Party. They're something different. That party is dead. It's some weird cult now. And unfortunately, the Democrats were not equipped to actually step out of it and say, this is no longer politics. This is some kind of war. This is the information war. They didn't fight the information war. They treated it as politics, and we are here because of that. I just got back from Washington, D.C., and I was able to watch an incredible public servant be sworn in. And there are many amazing Democrats who are advocating for their states and wanting to do as much as they can to affect change with the time that they have. But I will tell you, the fight is going to come from outside of the parties because they just simply didn't have the proper framework. Again, treating it as politics, taking policy papers to a gunfight is why we're here. J.D. Vance being normalized on stage as a real vice presidential candidate and not as somebody who was actually a replicant for the tech bros, wholly created out of cloth by Peter Thiel, didn't serve us well. Not looking out to all the other countries like Ukraine, who's fighting for its very right to exist, and not looking out and saying, wow, a decade ago, the same guy who was, working for the Putin puppet in Ukraine helped get Trump into power in 2016. Nobody was making those connections. So the pushback is going to come. Democrats will obviously be involved, but I think the pushback is going to come from pro-democracy factions that are outside of the party. And I hope that includes Republicans and independents, Republicans not co-opted by this cult. I hope it's a very robust response to people who still believe in the American dream and what we're, originally founded on, which were freedoms that are being taken away from us as we have this conversation.
Trump's power will ebb. But what he's birthed in this country or unleashed in this country is a sort of power of hate, the power of othering, creating an enemy. I mean, trans people, immigrants, it's whatever the enemy of the month is. They effectively have done that, and it's become so politically expedient to do it that I fear he's really unleashed this. And in the meantime, as you say, it's a tech broville. I mean, and I love that you mentioned J.D. Vance, and I know we've got to let you go, but because Vance was a total creation of Peter Thiel. Put him in a couple of his businesses in the world of Wall Street. He failed at those. Gave him $15 million, won that seat in the Senate because of the $15 million, and then put him into the vice presidency. I mean, and now Thiel and all those tech bros are running the country. It's outrageous, and I love that you mentioned it. It has to be something we constantly are aware of.
Well, I learned from Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who wrote Strong Men, that unfortunately, once a country gets a thirst for authoritarianism, it's very difficult to quench it, which is why it was so miraculous that we voted Trump out in 2020 and put in a true public servant in Joe Biden. That was something we did as Americans. So I just want people to know that we are not, feeble, that we can do these big things. However, no one ever tells a country when their last free and fair election just happened. And I fear that what Trump has ushered in is this age of dictator, is this age of oligarchy where, once he passes, it's going to be, Junior or Ivanka, et cetera. That is such a grim potential reality. But one thing I will say is these guys all hate each other and don't trust each other. Trump can't, turn his back without worrying about, the J.D. Vance faction or the Elon Musk faction. There will be utility in that. We too can wedge them against each other. It's just a matter of believing in ourselves enough and staying out of fear. They are doing a shock and awful campaign. It's designed to keep people in fear. It is scary, but it's not impossible. And again, start small and build your networks and be brave like Americans have been in the past.
It's so late there in the UK. I love that you joined us from there. We have your Substack up there. Heidi Cuda, the brilliant investigative reporter. BetteDangerous.com. Those listening, it's Bette. That's how you spell Betty, because a lot of people check it out as a podcast as opposed to YouTube. So if you're just listening, Bette, BetteDangerous.com. You can find her Substack and the gateway to all the great truths that you share. Come visit again when you get back home. Okay, thanks, Heidi.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Love seeing you. So long.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, yeah. I know. She's great. I do adore my Heidi Cuda. Yeah. And I thought, who said it for me? There are several people in the chat who, this is Tammy. Heidi, thank you, and please return. Exactly. Tammy speaks for me. She's really great. Really, really great. So now you know how to follow her and take in her material and media and writings, and we will have her back. So, Kim, if you still have it in you, what I wouldn't give for a little news.
I think I could muster one up. You bet.
No, I love that. Smash that.
Kim, how are you?
Love that Kim is chitting through another week. I had my chit mug. I was considering, really, it was. I know this is not just stuff I'm saying. So I have the, there's never been anything like this mug, which I got at this is one of our mugs. I got it at getmarkmerch.com. And I do think that
there's never been anything like this.
Yeah, there's but the chit mug, I had them both in my hand.
Oh.
And I did this whole thing where I go, should I get the chit mug going, or should I literally, these are the big decisions that come before I clean up the cat pee every morning.
Oh.
And I decided on there's never been anything like this. I don't know why I did. I think chit is my favorite mug, but I went for there's never been anything like this. And
sometimes you gotta shake it up. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to change for change's sake, maybe. I don't know. But I do adore my coffee and my in our Mark Thompson Show mug. Oh, and there's actually something fun happening with merch, and I can't, it's not hatched yet. We only just discussed it. So Courtney's working on it. Courtney's helping out a lot. So that's a very exciting thing that is kind of germinating. below the surface. So germinating a dingwort. All right, now smash the like button if you would.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod. It helps us in the world of YouTube. Any engagement, you have comments, whatever. That is all stuff that we appreciate on YouTube. We read all the comments. I look at all, try to respond to a few if I can. And the last thing I will say, Kim, is you turned me on to the Facebook group. There is a Facebook group. What is it? I forget what they're called, like the Mark Thompson Show Facebook.
Fan discussion page.
Oh, fan discussion page. It's on Facebook.
Here it
now,
is.
I'm not on Facebook a lot. I'd like to be on Facebook more. Facebook kind of confuses me. There are also like a lot of people. Honestly, I always get served. People are dying. People's pets are dying. People's pets need a transplant. People need a transplant. 7 minutes on Facebook, and I am really bumming out. I mean, you know. So the kind of wonderful stay in touch with your high school friends kind of part of Facebook, that seems gone right now. You know what I mean? Now it seems to be something else. But that said, I did go into the Facebook fan discussion page, the Mark Thompson Show Facebook page fan discussion. And I thought it was fun. It was there were kind of fun conversations and people posting stuff not even related to the show. And so here is the way I see that actually blossoming and being something great. And it doesn't even involve me. So I see this community that's come here to our new platform, which is YouTube, and then across all the audio platforms. We're on Spotify, we're on iHeart Radio, we're on Apple Podcasts. But I see those who have joined in the community and who might go to that Mark Thompson Show Facebook fan discussion page. They get to know each other. It grows. They post different things. They share different pieces of information. They might get together, as I think has happened once. They might do more. Their kids are then brought in some way, and ultimately it becomes a community that gets together. It's not even about the show anymore. Now it's about generations from now, you see, Kim. Maybe 3 generations from now, 30 years from now, or whatever. And they won't even know the Mark Thompson Show anymore. It'll be a thing, the Mark Thompson Show, but I don't even know who he was. It's like some radio show went to YouTube years ago. We all got together, and now we just get together. You know, it'll be like Thanksgiving. I mean, it'll be like, you know, how many people really know the story of Thanksgiving? I mean, it's been changed and the mythology has totally whitewashed the past, et cetera, whatever. It'll be, I see that as the ultimate goal, a way in which a community can reach out and bond to each other without originating at the show, but in the ultimately transcending the show.
Why are you yelling?
So I see a bright future because of this community that's drawn together here. It is, I don't know.
You do not know what you are talking about.
How dare you? How dare you?
Why are you
really have an eye toward the future. Wow.
I'm always thinking about the future, Kim. I'm always thinking about the future. All right, Kim's news, and we'll wrap up around here. I actually have some, I have a lot of stuff, but I'll get in what I can after the news. And I'll be right here for the news, too. That's the whole idea. I stay here for the news. Mark, is this sarcasm, Damaris? How dare you suggest that I'm being sarcastic?
Why are you yelling?
Trying to share a deep thought. This is a sense of futurism is what I'm talking about.
And this is their new hoax.
All right. I'll try not to be so wounded by what has just been said in the chat. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Wall Street's tech sector down sharply in some pretty volatile trading today. Shares of NVIDIA, Broadcom, AMD, and other AI-linked companies dropped on concerns over China's ChatGPT rival Deepseek. The company's newly released AI model reportedly outperformed OpenAI on several tests. It is climbing fast in the app stores. President Trump is expected to sign 3 executive orders as he claims to or aims to reshape this nation's military. One of the orders will reportedly include reinstating service members with back pay for those who were discharged for refusing the COVID vaccine. Another bans transgender service members from serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. The third will ban any diversity-related programs in the military. Federal agents are carrying out immigration raids in cities across America today. The Trump administration has launched a social media thread showcasing what it calls the worst criminals arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement since the inauguration. The White House X thread reads that under President Trump's leadership, ICE agents are working tirelessly to protect our communities.
Yeah, we mentioned it, if you missed it, in the first 15 minutes of the show or so, speaking of like official pronouncements related to the new golden age, I'm just glad that they didn't misspell golden age, because they misspelled Colombia. As you'll recall, he got into a big back and forth with the country of Colombia, but they, in the official White House announcement, spelled Columbia Columbia, like the university. It's, they've got big plans, but they're not the smartest crew.
Well, it is what it is. Apparently, a federal judge is vacating an order that banned some January 6th defendants from Washington, D.C. Last week, the judge barred January 6th defendants who had their sentences commuted by President Trump from visiting the U.S. Capitol or Washington, D.C. without first getting permission from the court. The Department of Justice responded by requesting the restrictions be removed. The judge declined to remove them, but acknowledged that they wouldn't really be enforced. Trump issued pardons and commutations for nearly all January 6th defendants after being sworn back into office last week.
So we've done chapter and verse on that.
Yeah,
so
that pretty much had no teeth. Heavy rainfall in Southern California has Los Angeles County Public Works prepping for possible mudslides in areas that were burned by the recent wildfires. County officials say flood control dams, river channels, and stormwater capture systems are all fully operational, and maintenance crews are on standby just waiting to make sure more of a disaster doesn't happen there. Residents along the Upper East Coast will jolt this morning. The USGS says a magnitude 3.8 earthquake hit just after 10:30 Eastern Time, about 8 miles from York Harbor, Maine, 65 miles north of Boston. No initial reports of damage or injuries, but the quake was felt in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. Welcome to California, folks. Restaurant employees in South San Jose are being hailed as heroes for warding off an attempted robot kidnapper. Yeah, the incident happened at Pho 21.
Oh, my God. Look at this guy. We got the video. Yeah. We're showing it to you now on YouTube. He just picks up the robot.
Yeah, trying to take it out to the car. Steal the robot. The incident happened at Pho 21, where 3 robot servers are used to help bring people their food. The surveillance video you're seeing now shows a man walking into the restaurant, using the restroom, then trying to grab one of the robot servers and drag it out of the building. Employees saw what was happening. They raced to grab the robot and wrestle it away from the man, who then fled the scene. The robot is valued at $18,000, and it does need special programming, so employees there can't figure out why that man would try to steal it.
Because he's a lowlife and Jerkoville, and he lives in Jerkoville. And look at Tony. Thank you for showing us the ways in which the robot delivers food, which is a really cool official job that the robot has. I'm sure the robot feels very good about that job, and probably the robot was thinking, "What's going on with this guy taking me into this car?" So, but they did. They got
the robot back. Yeah,
they got the robot back. This guy's
she goes chasing after him. Don't take my robot.
I like it. Mm-hmm. Gosh.
Also out of Djerkoville, school is out for some students in Vallejo because of copper thieves. Police say someone stole a bunch of copper wire from the campus of the Solano Windenman Leadership Academy over the weekend, leaving the school without power. So administrators learned of the theft Saturday when they came to campus to set up for a basketball tournament. Classes at the school have been canceled until further notice since the power's out because someone tried to steal the wire. Could be a week before the repairs are finished.
I don't know, with all these people, the lawlessness, Kim, you know where I am. I'm a law and order guy.
I know.
I hate to say it, but I think these people need to be dealt with in very harsh ways. They've gotten too lenient.
You should make the rules.
Yeah, I'm saying I think we've lost our way in this country.
Seriously, what the
Yeah. Speaking of losing our way in this country, we're about to really lose our way in this country, man, from the top down. But anyway.
The Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs are getting ready to face off in Super Bowl 59. The Chiefs vying for a third consecutive Super Bowl ring, a three-peat, as they say, when they meet the Eagles in New Orleans, on February 9th. So,
well, I am still dealing with this because I am a Buffalo Bills fan.
Oh.
And I feel as though the Bills played very well, and the Bills were aided by a call. The Chiefs were aided by a call, a critical call on a 4th and 1, in which the quarterback for the Bills, Josh Allen, seemed to have gotten the required yardage for first down. It would have been, it would have been a whole change because by not getting the first down or having the rule against you, you turn the ball over. It's now their possession. And that was a critical possession. So that was not only there it is. Thank you, Tony. So at that point, it appeared he'd gained enough yardage to get the first down. And in fact, the line judge from the far side of the field ran in having awarded essentially the yardage necessary to get the first down. But the other line judge ruled him short. And that became the rule. That is to say, the official ruling that they challenged. And because the video evidence wasn't overwhelming, they couldn't overturn it, the officials decided. And so they went with what turned out to be a bad call. So that adds to my disappointment because I feel as though the Bills really did have the stuff to beat them. Now, last thing I'll say on this, and I don't know how many people really care. Probably not very many, so I'll keep it really short. But the idea that you would run this play against the Chiefs, who had already stopped it a couple of times prior to this, to me, don't get the memo. They can stop you on this play. Don't run this play again. But still they did. I think they got the required yardage, but as I say, I think there were a number of different options that wouldn't have been running the exact same play that you got stuffed on 3 times in this game. I mean, why you thought the 4th time would be a charm by running that play? So anyway, I'm really bummed because I love the Bills and I felt as though they and they're great with the community and I love the community of Buffalo, so. It really sucks.
Well, what'll be nice is to see what Taylor Swift wears to the Super Bowl.
I see. Okay, well, when you put it that way, you're right. It's all worth it. Yeah.
I mean,
the NFL just wants to have more Taylor Swift, says John Watson.
That's exactly right. Yes.
All right. Refs in the tanks for Chiefs. You can't win in Kansas City, says the Rev. Yeah. Apparently. Horrible play calling, says Becky E. My son has already called for the coaches to be fired. LOL. Maybe Donald Trump will fire the coaches.
Perhaps.
Or fire the officials. Bills Mafia deserves better, says Becky. Yeah, we tried. Really, really tough. A bummer. But I'm glad you mentioned it because it was a big story and a lot of people watched it over the weekend. So.
As also mentioned on the show previously, Colombia, with an O, is sending 2 government planes to pick up migrants who were set to take military flights originally. Comes after the White House and the Colombian government agreed to President Trump's terms after threatening tariffs. In a statement, the White House said the country agreed to the terms that include the unrestricted acceptance of all quote, illegal aliens from Colombia returned from the United States. The statement also said that drafted actions on tariffs and sanctions would be held in reserve and not signed unless Colombia fails to honor this agreement. Trump threatened retaliatory measures after Colombia denied entry to a pair of U.S. military deportation flights. The president is also set to sign an executive order that would start the process of creating a missile defense shield for America, similar to Israel's Iron Dome. That, according to multiple reports that said Trump will sign the order today. The system has been used for years by Israel to stop missile launches from Gaza, with the U.S. providing billions in funding for it. The order will call for advanced space-based series of systems that can detect and shoot down any launches against the United States. No word on how much the shield will cost, how long it will take to develop, all of these things.
I'm guessing that it won't be that expensive, and they can get the whole thing up and going in 10 days to 2 weeks. Is that the, yeah.
Elon Musk probably has it all the sketch plans ready.
I think there's a kind of an Iron Dome you can pick up at IKEA. And you just have to put it together, if you were to put them all together, that would be big enough to cover the entire country.
Like Legos, they just snap right together?
Apparently, it's pretty easy. I mean, as you get somebody there, it's mostly dowels and, some basic, Tony could probably do it in a short time. But the
Tony can build anything.
The Iron Dome over the United States of America? Okay. I mean, I don't know.
Getting an Iron Dome.
That doesn't sound like a waste of money at all. No, I'm sure that there are no defense contractors in Donald Trump's ears saying, we could build you a Iron Dome like they have in Israel. And if we started now, with some seed money from the U.S. government, we could deliver it to you during your term. And this would be something that I think would be a great, be something in your administration you could talk about. It would be a great accomplishment for of course, it would help with national security.
Well,
and then
when
Trump
you
goes for
start pissing other countries off, maybe you need an Iron Dome.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, you'll need a lot more than an Iron Dome. He should maybe get somebody from Colombia from Columbia University, Columbia,
yeah, right,
to advise him. Yeah.
President Trump also directed.
Got to stop the balloons, says Mars. Exactly. You got it. Stop those balloons.
Trump also directing government agencies to override California's water policies. He criticized the state's handling of the Los Angeles wildfires in an executive order over the weekend. The order says that it is in the nation's interest to ensure that California has what it needs to prevent and fight these fires and others in the future. This comes after Trump visited LA last week to look at the wildfire damage. He said at that time he would issue federal assistance if the state mandated voter identification and released more water from Northern California to the rest of the state. So we'll see how this all works out.
I mean, it's fun. These executive orders some of them are just performative, as you know. Some of them are really enacted and have dramatic repercussions, but some of them are just performative. I mean, I'll give you an example. Probably the best example so far is an executive order from the desk of the president saying, I've instructed my administration and the best minds in the administration to look into ways to lower consumer prices in America. Well, that's a nothing executive order. I don't know why you do it, but he does it because it makes it on Fox News and it makes it, and it builds an image and a brand. But this is the kind of, he's playing president, okay? A lot of what Trump does is playing president, the theater of the presidency. So these are pronouncements that are not followed by any kind of real policy. Similarly, and this is kind of exists in an intermediate area with California, you're saying, I've instructed my administration to look into the ways in which California fights these fires and makes, et cetera. It's mostly performative, but you always worry he could do something with our relief money unless we kowtow and bow. I thought Gary was good with that in talking about the way Newsom handled Trump, and I hope that the way in which they seem to have reached a kind of good relationship, I hope it holds. Because
I don't know. I looked at that thing on the tarmac, and I didn't see what Gary saw. I saw a battle for dominance with a handshake and the pushing and the pulling and the.
It's funny. I know. I saw that in a couple of tabloids also, and I understand. To be fair, I understand how you could have that impression, but I think. It's two guys who are, it's unless you're really hearing what's being said, I think to read too much into the way he's leaning and how and he used his hand like that. I mean, I just think that it's just too much there. The public remarks, too much there that we're not hearing. the public remarks that Trump made were quite conciliatory, and I thought they were.
See, yanking it back and forth. That's what Trump does. He starts pulling on your hand like that over and
Yeah,
over.
but that doesn't. I mean, so what? I mean, again, that's like getting distracted by stuff that just doesn't matter. You know,
It's like this. It's like this weird masculine energy where you have to like overpower the other guy. And I kind of like that Newsom didn't back down to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just want federal money, however we get it. I want some federal support. So
I'll take the cash.
Yeah.
Lastly, the action film Flight Risk is the winner at the weekend box office. The film, directed by Mel Gibson, starring Mark Wahlberg, made $12 million in its debut weekend. Mufasa: Lion King took second with more than $8 million and pushed its total haul to $626 million globally. The comedy One of Them Days took third with $8 million, and then, of course, Mark's favorite movie, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, stayed in fourth with $5.5 million in its sixth weekend in theaters. Moana
you have
2,
to see the first two to be able to appreciate the third.
You really do. You really
do. Michael said Flight Risk was okay. That's what he told us on Friday.
Yeah, it's got Mark Wahlberg in it. He's a big box office draw. So
apparently. Yeah.
This report is sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee. As Mark mentioned earlier, it's a little bit of heaven in your cup. It's good. Yeah, it's all fresh. The source is from all women-owned farms. It is really nice too, because sometimes they put little extras in your package that they send you. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Please make sure and take advantage of the exclusive Mark Thompson Show discount. You get 10% off by just putting Mark T, all together, Mark T, in the code at checkout. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Fresh beans, baby. Fresh beans. Get your beans fresh. Don't get that stuff they swept off the floor and threw in they throw it into a pound bag and then they discount it for you. These are fresh. Yeah. Right on.
It's all about fresh. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Hey Mark, it's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
That's pure speculation.
What's a little lie between friends?
Morning.
We're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Good day, sir! Seriously, what the
Why are you yelling?
Yeah, you know it. I am taking stock of a couple of things here toward the end. Noe Marie with a $5 super chat saying Melania's hat sure wasn't blocking any kisses when she touched down in California.
Yeah.
Yeah, different than that at that inauguration.
Smooch for Gov.
She had her own Iron Dome going during the inauguration. But when she got to California, it was time to make out with Gavin Newsom. And no problem, baby. No problem. And it's pointed here by Mo Direct, who, watches a lot of specific things that we are slightly over time. You'd think that would be celebrated by the audience, but I guess he has someplace to be.
Oh.
Trevor says that breaking fake news, Trump says that more illegal immigrants will be returned to Chile, spelled Chilly. Yes. Yeah.
Is that where Chile's baby back ribs come from?
That's right. That's Chilli.
Oh.
Who knew that there were so many? Do the January 6th pardoned folks have the right to have guns? Asks Give Me the Truth. The answer is yes, they do, and their gun ownership is no longer blocked by any kind of the court order, since they've essentially had their history purged. In fact, not only has their history been purged, but there is a rewriting of that history, and we're going to talk about that later in the week, and talking about in the virtual world and the world of the White House as well. On our dream for that Facebook group to somehow grow into, in this community, to grow into a world of robust relationships that will carry them all on into the decades ahead. It was a beautiful dream, I thought. But Silicon Valley Block says that Mark is a fine cult leader. He saw it as a bit cultish. I'm not part of it. That was the whole idea. I'm not going to be even part of it. The chat roasts Mark. Exactly. I felt quite roasted by my own people. Teacher Lori says the resistance that Betty talks about with some Betty Dangerous, and that was, I get it. Betty Dangerous, which is, I thought what you were referencing, but Betty Dangerous is Heidi, who we had on earlier. She was talking about the resistance. So teachers saying the resistance better find some tech bro type person who can build and make available a streaming platform to replace YouTube. Don't you think Google is going to make shows like this one impossible soon? Well, I will tell you that it has occurred to me, and if we do have to go away, if they nix us off this platform, we'll find a way to get the word out through the Facebook group or through some other platform as to where we end up. But we'll certainly try to keep it running. Right now, one of the great things about YouTube is that it's a solid platform, easily accessible for a lot of people, and we can actually, in our success and in growing the audience, begin to get some revenue from what we do, which is important. I mean, Kim, I'm sure, loves the audience and loves me, but, she's also got bills to pay and, family to support. And Tony, same thing. He's got to pay for all that stuff behind him. Look at that. It's like Dave and Buster's at his house. There's like a new...
I got to pay for a car to get fixed, so yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I'm just saying, so... Dr. Phil joins from Teacher Laura. Dr. Phil joined the U.S. border czar Tom Homan in a choreographed immigration raid in Chicago. Exactly. That's what I was talking about. The idea is to show you what they're doing. So Dr. Phil is helping them in their propaganda about what they're doing. Went to L.A. this weekend, says Donald the Maine Coon, and on our way back Sunday around 13:30, that's 1:30 military time. Actually, 13:30 is the military time. 1:30 is the time. It started raining, and on our way down the Grapevine, it snowed. It was beautiful. Yeah, they closed the Grapevine for a time this weekend because of that snow. Wow. Trump was despicable to the Danish president, says De Hagvold. Yeah, he's not really very cool with any of the European power leaders. Michael says, frankly, we should pay more for food. Trump, among others, doesn't understand that we import slaves to pick our crops. That's true. We do have an underclass that is used to pick these crops and to work in slaughterhouses and to work in huge sanitation companies that are all over America. And as in the kitchens, as Kim was noting earlier, this is a huge thing. The underground economy is real. So, Jason says, I may still start calling him Pope Thompson just for the joy. Well, one never knows when if the right moniker fits, go for it. I have to ask you to smash the like button on the way out.
Iron rod.
I have to make way for the After Party Live, which is the show that Kim does on her own, without the impediments that I put in front of her. I'm a kind of a pain. I'm frustrated a lot of the time. I'm chirping on too long about this or that. And Kim is unfazed by all that. But she breaks into glory in her own way. Did you see the end of Shawshank Redemption? Where he's there and he holds his arms out as the rains cleanse him from the horror he's just been through. That's the way Kim feels every day when she gets free of this show and she can do her own show called the After Party Live.
We'll do it live.
Yeah.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Go over there and check it out. Well, tomorrow I've got an amazing Law and Disorder, which includes a huge scam and more.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, people watching
Out of time.
and
Bye,
listening.
bye.
We are out of time. That's a great grab, Tony. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.